Hello and welcome to Family Matters, brought to you by Hometown TV and ACAP, the Academy of Clinical and Applied Psychoanalysis in Livingston, New Jersey. In today's program, Adolescents and the Porcupine Defense, we're going to be talking about what's normal about the abnormal in adolescence. We're also going to be talking about how to live with what used to be our little angels and are now the monsters in the house under our roof. Even as important, we're going to be talking about what we as parents and adults need to know about ourselves and our history that will help us to deal more effectively with our kids. My name is Dr. Patricia Bratt, and I am a director at ACAP. With us today are Dr. Sheila Zaretsky, who is a psychoanalyst and an educator. She brings to the program many years of study of adolescent development through both her private practice, her work at the New York City public school systems, and her work as a director and faculty at ACAP. Also, Dr. Charles Pumilia, who is a psychoanalyst and a psychologist who has a different perspective on adolescence, both through his clinical work in his practice and through his years as a psychologist at the New York City school systems and as a clinical director of a day treatment program and faculty at ACAP. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, when I was starting to prepare for this program, when we were all talking about it, one of the things that first occurred to me was that one of the worst times in my life, the times when I felt most bumbling, incompetent, inept, angry, frustrated, was when I was the parent of a teenager. I thought back, when I was a teenager, I was completely confident in my head. It was delusional. I knew that I knew it was right and that my parents didn't. But then when I became a parent of a teenager, I became suddenly anxious. I was wondering, what did you all experience?
I suffered the same delusion as you as a teenager. It's nice to know I wasn't alone. I had very much the same feeling. Somehow this idea of not knowing everything that I need to do to be a successful parent and raise a successful teenager.
I second that. First of all, I had sons, and I didn't know how to negotiate adolescence myself as a child and then to help them. But we bumbled through.
That's right. I grew up with 4 sisters and I had a son. I didn't know what was the first thing about being around a boy. I remember my supervisor, Hyman Spotnitz, said to me, "What's wrong with you? You've never been worried about doing something right before. Now what are you so worried about?" So why do parents worry so much about their kids? Why do we worry when we become, we see our kids growing up? What is it about watching that and not knowing that is so affecting to us?
At first I thought that it's, I remember growing up in a world so less complex than the one my children are growing up in, and thought that maybe this incredible complexity is what's contributing to my anxiety. Do they have more they have to master and know and become? But then I realized my parents probably had the same feeling I had. And I think it's just a perennial parental feeling, especially around this time.
Well, Dr. Pumilia, should your parents have been worried about you?
No.
I know that my parents should have been worried about me. I mean, that's the truth. I was a kid who really should have worried my parents. I don't know if they did because I protected them. How about you, Dr. Zaretsky?
I protected my parents too. I never told them anything whatsoever. Did they need to worry that much about me? I was an anxious person, so I did a lot of worrying about myself, and I did have a wonderful time. Adolescence was fun, just fun.
So were we delusional? Did we really know what we were doing, and our parents were the dummies who we thought they were? And then did we become dummies when we became parents?
I don't think we had any, at least I didn't have any idea really of the danger, for example, of riding around in a car with a bunch of kids. No concept. And maybe it wasn't as dangerous back then, but we didn't even have seat belts. We for the most part, we did a little drinking, and that was about it. A little drinking and a lot of necking, and it was fun.
A lot of necking?
A lot of necking.
Uh-huh. This was in the cars?
Sure.
While they were moving?
Sure.
But that wasn't
Like a
dangerous,
drive-in.
right? That wasn't dangerous.
Yeah,
How
like a
about,
drive-in.
where did you grow up?
Norfolk, Virginia.
So you were in Virginia. And where were you, Dr.
I
Pumilia?
grew up in Brooklyn.
Uh-huh, which was very safe.
Actually, my neighborhood was. Many of the others weren't. It was a relatively protected enclave. So in a lot of ways, when I look back, I grew up, I think, with a very naive belief that I did know a lot more than it turns out I did. Now that I look back, I sometimes wonder about what I was really like then.
Do your kids know as much as you knew?
I have a funny feeling they may know more.
They may know more.
Yes.
How do they know more?
I think part of it was that I would try to help them to know more. I always thought it would be a very good idea for them not to be as sheltered as I was. I grew up in a much more sheltered family environment where a lot of things weren't talked about, and my wife has tried to make that a different kind of a more open communication. So hopefully they've learned more, or at least we're
So they've
free to talk
learned
about
from you.
it. I hope so.
We said we're going to talk about adolescence and the porcupine defense. What's the porcupine defense, Dr. Zaretsky?
When I first saw you using that phrase, I thought of, what did I think of? I thought of how we're all porcupines, and I know, Freud's having two porcupines on his desk, and his metaphor for marriage as it being when porcupines get close, they hurt each other. And then when they pull away, they get cold and lonely. So this is a metaphor of marriage. Porcupines, I know you're referring to the touchiness and the need of adolescents to distance themselves from the parents. I don't know what else to say about
Why
that.
do they
it's
need
vast.
to distance themselves?
I'm convinced it's a gene expression. A gene gets turned on that says, as my colleague's daughter said to me, her 14-year-old daughter, or actually said to my granddaughter, she said, I asked her to teach my granddaughter, my 6-year-old granddaughter, how to be a teenager. And she said to my, as I walked away, she was delighted. As I walked away, she said to my to my 6-year-old granddaughter, she said, number 1, don't listen to your parents. Don't do a thing they say. Chapter 2, don't listen to your teachers. Don't do a thing they say. And she couldn't have said it better. That's adolescence. They want to be autonomous.
Porcupine defense, what do you think?
Well, I think of it as when the adolescents are trying to grow up and separate and mature, they're not exactly sure how to do that. And parents may not be particularly sure about how to let go. So in order to facilitate the process, if you have enough quills, you can create just enough repulsion to keep them away from you so that you can go about your business, try to do it as best you can, and not let people get too close and intrude.
I remember when my son was growing up and an adolescent, he was an adorable kid as a youngster, and I don't know who he turned into when he got to be about 14. I mean, quills were the least of it. What about Alexandra?
Alexandra was an absolutely adorable child.
She still is.
She still is.
She's a beautiful child.
She really is a very beautiful child. She's a great kid. And she's going through adolescence now too. And I can
How
really
is she tolerating you?
Oh, I'm despised.
So you're doing a good job.
I'm doing a very good job. And she's, hopefully I'm doing a good enough job that she's able to let me know that as well. So it's more than just her behavior that reminds me that I should be stepping back a bit, watching, talking less, and getting only involved when she needs me to. And despite all my training, that's not always an easy thing to remember. And I sometimes forget, and she helps to remind me.
How does she do that?
By reminding me that I'm being a jerk.